Okay, Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Okay, inshallah, so my section is about going through some of the practical aspects of what we are doing and showing you how, inshallah, you can identify secularism within textbooks. Okay? I'm sure you can do a great job, inshallah, because, alhamdulillah, I'm seeing a lot of good discussion and everyone's going in the right direction, so it's good to see that, you know, it's all unfolding in front of us. Things that were there, but we couldn't see, now we can see it quite clearly, inshallah. So I just want to start off with, I asked ChatGPT a question. I asked it to give me some questions that show that the life cycle of a frog is not the product of nature, cause, or chance, but a creation. Okay, so I just want to show the answer. It said to me, as an AI language model, I must clarify that the life cycle of a frog is indeed a product of nature and not a result of intentional creation. The life cycle of frogs, like other organisms, follows natural processes and adaptations that have evolved over millions of years. The development from eggs to tadpoles to adult frogs is a result of biological and environmental factors. If you have any other questions or topics you'd like to discuss, feel free to ask. This was actually after several questions. I had asked it several times, and it got annoyed with me. So I just wanted to start off with this to show the extent of the problem that we're going to be facing now that AI is coming in. And, you know, if a child is Googling something, just trying to find some way of doing their homework, this is the kind of stuff they're going to be coming across. Okay, so it's very obvious to us. This is very black and white. But I want to look at some things which might be a bit hidden as well. But before I do that, I just want to go into some context, which we've been discussing. I can see, alhamdulillah, some of you have quite a good, vast background. But just for the sake of completeness, we'll just go through a few things about the challenge that Muslims face today. Is it a knowledge challenge? Is it a technology challenge? Is it a resources challenge? Or is it an ideology challenge? What is the actual challenge? What is the actual challenge? We need to get to that, because otherwise we split our efforts and we're working on different things, and we're working on some things that need to be worked on after. What is the priority? So in terms of knowledge, we know that many of the leading scientists around the world are Muslims. You know, whether they're in NASA, whether they are in, you know, heart surgery, brain surgery, research in any field. Many Muslims are at the top of the field in the Muslim world and in the non-Muslim world. In terms of technology, when we have the technology, when we can harness it and use it for anything. I don't know if any of you have ever seen videos on YouTube of some very resourceful farmers, you know, using very simple machinery to make something amazing. I just read just recently that a farmer in Pakistan, he made a dam. Over 6 years, he saved money and he made a dam. Like, making a dam is not something that's easy to do, but this guy just did it, right? So it's not that we don't have technology or we don't know how to use technology. In terms of resources, the Muslim world is abundant with many resources. We know that. That's why we were colonized. So it's actually the ideology. This is the actual challenge. And this is something that as educators, we see it very, very clearly. But we need to communicate it to parents and all stakeholders that are involved in the education. And indeed to the whole Muslim Ummah. Everyone needs to know that it's actually the ideology. The decline of the Muslim Ummah is because of not understanding the Islamic belief and adopting a secular mindset. So even though somebody said it earlier, I think it was brother over there, that we might appear to be doing everything that a Muslim is required to do, but we have adopted secularism. And this is because of the hidden secularism within the education system that we have all gone through. Every single one of us has been exposed to that virus, to that disease, and we've internalized it, and we don't even know about it sometimes. So I'm hoping that through today's session that I'm doing, that is going to give you a very clear guideline, and you'll be able to, after this, with any textbook, be able to find exactly what it is that we are talking about, inshallah. So in terms of how this happened to the Muslims in terms of the education system, we went through several periods, and obviously this is a very, very quick summary. We don't have time to talk about anything in detail. That we know about the golden age of Islam. We know how the Muslims, scientists, they achieved a lot. And sometimes people say to us, why do you keep going on about that? Sometimes in discourse this happens, that why are you talking about that? We're talking about that because it's actually the true reflection of the Islamic belief. That when we understood the Islamic belief, it produced results for us in every aspect of society, not just technology and science, but in everything. The Muslims were advanced in everything. Why? Because they had a clear understanding of what their belief system was, and they were living by it. But after that, due to several factors, the Mongols, the Crusades, etc., there was a period of stagnation where the education that was happening, it wasn't consolidated. Many factors were there. And then we see the emergence of modernist thought around the same time as Enlightenment had taken place, and they had revived in terms of the Industrial Revolution in the West, and they had started to, the great transformation had occurred for them, and they had advanced their society. So Muslims responded to that with their own version of modernist thought. And that was actually, again, ignoring the core issue of the belief and taking on board certain ideas which led them even further away from Islam. Because if you don't understand the belief, if you don't understand Allah as the creator of every single thing and of you, and you are then his servant, then you no longer want to serve that creator. You want to serve, like we said earlier, your nafs, etc. So we can see how this period in the Muslim Ummah, many ideas became adopted, which led to us thinking that we were advancing and progressing, but in fact, we went into further decline. On the current situation, you all are experiencing it, and this is why you are here. And so how do we get to revival? This is what we are going to be, inshallah, understanding through the next few days. This is the purpose of it. And this context, I wanted to just put it out there to remind us of, where the successes were and the reason for the success, and where the failure has been and the reason for that failure. And I want to particularly ask you to go and research about the modernist thinking that happened in the 1800s and the 1900s, early 1900s. What happened? Well, how did the Muslims approach, and when they researched and discussed and found solutions, what did they do wrong? What is it that they did wrong? The reason we need to know that is because we are still doing it today. We are still doing it today. And until we find out what's the actual way for us to approach education, we will continue to find things that we think are solutions, apply them, waste a lot of time, and then realize, okay, this didn't work either. So Islamization of knowledge, it was a great effort. A lot of thinking went into it, a lot of energy, effort, time, money, resources, everything went into it, but it was not the right answer. Integration of knowledge, inshallah, it's the right answer. Why? Because we are taking it from the Quranic methodology. Why? Because we are going back to how Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam received Islam, how he received Quran, and how he communicated it. So we believe that integration of knowledge is the way, but what is integration? What actually is integration of knowledge? This is what we're going to, inshallah, understand. So the problems that existed for us, colonization, modernist thinking, all of this led to secularization of education. Whether we live in the Muslim world or whether we live in the West, we've been exposed to secular education. What that means is that removal of the creator from everything we study, not just science. Brother over there talked about science. We're not just talking about science. Science is a starting point for us. Inshallah, we will be working on many other subjects and other areas of the curriculum, inshallah. So I just wanted to give you this quote from Faruqi in his book Islamization of Knowledge, where he talked about how adopting a Western education system, how it affected us. He said, little did they realize that alien humanities, social sciences, and indeed the natural sciences as well, were facets of an integral view of reality, alien to that of Islam. So he's saying that whatever we studied, whether it was humanities or social sciences, anything, it was alien to Islam, because that education system that resulted due to colonization was not something that we produced from our texts or from an Islamic mindset. Little did they know of the fine and yet necessary relations which bind the methodologies of these disciplines, their notions of truth and knowledge, to the value system of an alien world. And sometimes when we look at particularly English literature or social sciences, we see there's a problem, but we don't know exactly where the problem is. And it's tempting to just eliminate those things from the school and from the curriculum, but that's not really what we want to do. We want to equip the children to identify those alien concepts. So this is something that is very important. And words like secularism, humanity, social justice, democracy, these are words that we seem to think have something to do with Muslims as well. In fact, sometimes we say, oh, the Muslims, they had the first democracy. Or the Muslims, they believe in humanity more than anyone else. But each of these terms is loaded from an ideology, from an ideological perspective. These terms don't come from our sources of knowledge. We have a very specific way of accessing our knowledge, that is the revealed knowledge. And again, there's a lot that can be said here. Maybe I can answer some of your questions later on, inshallah. But I just wanted to put this point out here as well for you, because it's true, we're not just talking about science, we are talking about everything. And I'm sure sitting here thinking, you are recalling things that you have taught, and you're wondering, was that right, was that wrong? Where do these words come from? What is their actual meaning? This is upon us to find out. This is upon us to search that why are these terms not compatible with Muslims? We have our own terms. We have our own belief system. Everything comes from our belief system. Once we understand that, once we understand and know Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, every single thing falls in place. But if we do not know Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we can't identify where these things are a problem. And in terms of neocolonialism, again, something which is very normalized for us is the Sustainable Development Goals of the United Nations. And again, I wanted to bring this to your attention because many schools are taking this on board, working with it, thinking it's a good thing. I just want to draw your attention to one quotation I found, which I thought was probably the best one, about the educational goal, goal number 4, SDG 4. It is rights-based and inspired by humanistic vision. What is a humanistic vision? Humanistic vision, it comes from humanism. What is humanism? It comes from the idea that morals can come from human beings and not from a creator. Okay? A humanistic vision of education and development based on the principles of human rights and dignity, social justice, peace, inclusion, and protection, as well as cultural, linguistic, and ethnic diversity and shared responsibility and accountability. All seem like very wonderful words, but there is a hidden message in all of them because they are ideologically laden. They are coming from that secular viewpoint. And if any of you have read the Human Rights Charter or even the United Nations Declaration, the first 10 points that they have, you'll see that when they talk about freedom, when they talk about rights, when they talk about dignity, it's from the secular viewpoint. So we need to be able to identify these things in the textbooks that are in our schools. So moving on to the topic that we are discussing about nature, cause, and chance, I just want to look at, give you some guidelines on how to look at textbooks, how they explain specific phenomena. So, for example, the origin of life on Earth, the textbooks that you have in your schools, does the textbook present it solely as a result of evolutionary processes and neglects any notion of creation? So this is a question you can ask yourself. The formation of galaxies and celestial bodies, does the textbook solely attribute it to the laws of gravity and cosmological processes without exploring the notion of purposeful creation? So this is something that Dr. Yunus was talking about what's the purpose of all of this. So are the textbooks doing this? Because obviously in the textbooks, they're not saying become secular, leave God. They're not saying it. It's the way in which they're presenting science is alluding to it, is removing the creator. So in terms of diversity of species, does the textbook solely rely on the concept of natural selection and adaptation? The water cycle, carbon cycle, and nitrogen cycle, does the textbook emphasize the deterministic and mechanistic aspects of the natural processes without considering the wonder and purpose behind the intricate balance that sustains life? And one of the things that I find since coming to the 5D way of thinking is everything becomes amazing. Everything in science, everything you look at, everything you study, everything you try and discover, it becomes amazing. It becomes fascinating. It becomes wondrous because you're actually seeing it for what it is. You're not just restricting it to these are the laws. These are the gravitational laws. These are laws of forces and magnets, etc. Like, why is it most children don't like science? It's difficult. It's difficult to understand. It's something that it's not fun unless they do the experiments, right? But when materialism, what it has done, it's taken away the wonder. Because it's explained things in a very black and white way. This is how it is, and that's it, just accept it. And you don't, there's no room for discovery and understanding, okay, so what does this mean? How did this happen? Who is behind this? What is the power behind this? So when we ask these questions, students can recognize if the explanations are entirely secular in nature and devoid of meaning and purpose. So you can start this tomorrow. You can ask these questions tomorrow in any of your science classes.
There's a question.
Yeah.
So one question, maybe you're going to address this later on, maybe I'm going a bit further. So look at the point number 2, right? You're looking at the formation of the galaxies, right? So the last point there, right, you're basically saying without the exploring the notion of purposeful creation, correct? We know they never discuss that. They never discuss why this was created. Mm-hmm. So if a student in your class, right, a Muslim student asked, okay, well, I understand that the regular books don't. What would be your explanation?
So what we're going to do is we're going to approach the lesson in a way that inspires them to think. First, we're going to look at the textbook that we have, and we are going to identify and understand, okay, here, this is the problem in this particular paragraph. So we will discuss it by refuting what's there, depending on the grade level. So obviously, grade-wise, like grade 4 or 5 child can easily understand if you're refuting that gravity is the cause of certain forces that exist, that gravity itself. You can ask them, can you see gravity? How do you know gravity is there? There is an idea, there is a force that something is holding us to the ground. Why are we being held to the ground? Why is it necessary? Why is it important? You find the benefits in it. You find the wisdom within it. So you can take aspects of the 5D model and use it with the textbooks that you have, or we can just use the 5D model approach the topic with the 5D model. So the 5D model has 5 steps. And in those steps, inshallah, we're going to go through them in a couple of days, but in those steps, what we do is we make the children compare the thing that you're studying with something made by human beings. Just like Dr. Yunus in the morning, he gave you so many different examples of different comparisons, like he gave the kidney and the dialysis machine. So for example, that is something easy for a child to see, that there is a maker, a designer behind a dialysis machine. So why would there not be a maker and designer behind a kidney? Okay, so we encourage those questions, then we go to critical thinking, then we look to the topic that we are studying, we look within it for the wisdom and the purpose. And we look within it to appreciate it and to see how it connects to the entire universe and how it benefits us. And then we can learn some lessons from it. So these 5 steps, inshallah, I think on day 3, Dr. Najati is going to go through them. And after that, we're going to give you multiple examples of how to apply it. Okay? But as a starter, you can just raise these questions and ask students the questions that we asked you this morning. Why? How? How do you know this? And why would this happen? Why is it necessary? Why is it needed? What can you see? What can you observe? So that we can actually develop real scientific thinking. So ideological education is about spreading your ideology. It's about giving your viewpoint. It's about promoting what you believe in. So what can you see being promoted over here? What concept can you see when you study the water cycle? Self-sustaining, no starting, no beginning, no creator involved, right?
Deterministic science.
Yeah, it's something that happens by itself. There's certain conditions are necessary. When the sun hits the water, it evaporates it into water droplets. Then they rise up in the air, form clouds. Clouds move around by the wind. It rains, the water comes back. So we explained it. We told you, this is the water cycle. This is how you get fresh water.
Like,
Okay?
as if everyone knows what they're going to do very... Like, everyone knows what they're going to do very perfectly.
Yeah. It's laid out for you. There's no thinking involved. There's no wonder. I'll give you one fun fact. Actually, I'll ask you, how heavy do you think clouds are? How much do you think a cloud weighs? An average sized cloud? 50 kilograms? 100 kilograms? How much?
Thousands of kilograms. Depends on the big how large it is.
Several thousand tons, right? Several thousand tons. So what keeps it in the air? What keeps a cloud which weighs several thousand tons in the air? What keeps an airplane in the air? Fuel, right? A skilled pilot.
That's an amazing question. I mean, that's the first time, that the cloud pod with a weight like that, you compare it to an aeroplane, right? An aeroplane, you've got a jet engine that is basically propelling it through, right? But a cloud on its own, right? And that is a question, that's the first most amazing question I've seen.
That's the 5D thinking method.
Not really.
To raise questions like that.
Can I add to that, like especially we're in Western, when we fly through clouds, it's so light, it's
Yeah.
so fluffy, but it weighs tons of.
Yeah, it looks light and fluffy, doesn't it? we use cotton to represent it, don't we? But look at its reality. How did that happen? Those properties of a cloud, who created them? How did it happen? So you want this wondrous approach to it. You want to make the children really question. And you want to take them away from this point of it's just a never-ending cycle that can exist by itself. And I love Dr. Nadati's approach on the metamorphosis example. It's like he gives the example, he says that, have you ever seen a train, transform into an airplane? Have you? No. You think that's ridiculous. So what about a caterpillar, which is totally different to a butterfly? How did that happen? Yet we've given it one of those amazing names, metamorphosis. We've explained it, a fancy term, with someone in a white coat and glasses saying, this is it. So we have, just a side point, scientists themselves, they act like gods, don't they? If a scientist comes and tells you something, you're going to say, yes, I believe you, especially pre-COVID. Post-COVID, not so much, okay? But pre-COVID, everyone believed scientists. Okay, so let's just look at a few more things. For plants, when you explain the growth of fruits and vegetables, how is it presented? Is it presented as a random process with pollination taking place, then germination, photosynthesis, and again without any higher purpose or intention behind it? And what is the result of fruits and vegetables? A seed that is for tomatoes or cucumber, what's the result of it? It's a delicious fruit, right? But we don't call it a delicious fruit. We just say a fruit, a vegetable. We don't talk about the amazing produce that is coming from soil which we would never eat, soil which contains so many gross, creepy crawlies, right? But we would never eat that. But what's coming out of it is something which is totally different, and it's not just edible, but it's good for us. So does your textbook do that? No, it doesn't. It doesn't do that, okay? In terms of how plants grow, the textbook tells you that it's the seed that has an inherent ability to grow. That's the seed that goes, from a tiny thing to a huge plant or to a huge tree. ask the children, show them a big tree and say, how did this come from this tiny seed? How did the seed know I need to grow this particular tree?
They would answer you scientifically. They would say when the temperature is this thing and the weather is this, it will grow.
Exactly.
They will never say that Allah.
So the processes are used to explain what happened. Yeah? The processes explain it.
That's it.
Okay, right. Let's get your thinking caps on now. In this particular paragraph from a textbook, can you find in there where the secular ideology is? Can you all read it? Back there? Come on, quickly.
Those that have clever ways of keeping cool.
Yeah.
Those that have clever ways.
So some of them are clever. They should be graduating high school, right?
The clever ways.
If the plants are lucky.
They're lucky. They're lucky that the seeds fall in the right place. Okay, what else? Adaptation.
To grow in.
Okay, very good. Okay, now this one. This is all from textbooks, by the way.
They wait until they sense. They wait. They wait and they're smart.
They wait until they sense the right conditions to revive again.
For something special to happen.
They need the right conditions.
Yes, right conditions.
Yeah.
And look at the exclamation mark. They say non-living, but they are.
What about this one?
Provides the sun.
There's no sun.
Life would not be possible without the sun.
They just equated the sun to the creator.
Yeah, exactly. So the sun is the source of creation.
And the sun provides us.
Yeah. Okay. And this one?
So small.
This is about seasons. Look at the last paragraph. Scientists explain why the seasons change in a cycle. They find that the Earth is moving around the sun. So it's like, they just...
For that purpose, it's like Earth like has its own purpose, attributing that this has a mind of its own.
And it's the final word on it. This is it. You just need to know the scientists found out how this happens. This is your information. Take it and just make sure that when it's winter, wear a coat, and when it's summer, have a cool drink. That's the purpose of this knowledge, isn't it? But that's the same sun, the same earth, different parts of the earth having all the different types of seasons, all the different type of weather. It's nothing amazing. There's nothing amazing about it. It's just something you can easily explain. Okay, and again, they've linked it into the water cycle. They're reminding them that it's a cycle like the water cycle. Okay, so that's a bit of reinforcement of secularism going on there. Okay, so what are the dangers of secularization then? What effect does this have on our kids? When they don't have any idea of the wondrous nature of the Creator, and the Creator is not something they can see anywhere. They're only told about it in Islamic studies class. They're told that, oh, by the way, Allah created everything. Or even in the same science lesson, you might tell them, here is a verse of Quran that talks about the water cycle, and Allah made it. But can you give that antidote with that poison and think that it's going to work? No, because you're creating a mindset, you're creating thoughts and ideas of things happening by themselves, things which exist creating life, things which exist allowing different things to happen, different causes and different effects. And then therefore that's happening, and if you believe in Allah, maybe He just started it, yeah? Or if you don't believe in Allah, then it's not important for you at all. The question is not needed, right? And the result of it is this, is that you don't know Allah, you don't feel Allah, you don't see Allah. So your goal in life becomes the worldly outcomes. Your goal in life becomes getting through high school, getting your degree, getting your PhD, getting married, having a house, car, etc. And anything you do is motivated not for any greater, higher purpose or afterlife, but for your own benefit. For your own benefit. And it doesn't matter if there's somebody else who's getting hurt by you pursuing your benefit. Somebody getting neglected, responsibilities getting neglected because you're pursuing your benefit. Then obviously we know Western society, pushes the concept of physical pleasures. Why? Because they want you to not think. They want you to be busy in something so that you don't have a chance to think about all the problems that you're facing. And materialism. Just collect lots of pretty things to put in your house. Yeah? This is the purpose of Western education. It's about capitalism, what Dr. Najati talked about this morning. So basically, there are so many ideas interlinked into the subject that we have raised with you about secularism. It's everywhere. So yes, science is a starting point, but we have to find it everywhere. Okay, now I'm going to send you a little activity on the group. So everyone get your phones, please. So it's a little... Okay, so, I've sent you a little, it's a one page. I want you to read it, and I want you to tell me your thoughts on it. So you can see there's multiple things there that if you were to try and teach this, you'd spend all your time trying to correct what's in there. Right? Yeah, Fawzia?
There's also a mythological aspect to it. You can see they're trying to make it, that you read about myths and legends and sort of literature, they're trying to attribute this type of quality to the creator. It's just another myth. You see, it's another aspect. Yeah.
Can everyone turn the microphones on to be able to record it?
I think this also can make that and also make mistake.
Yeah.
In investigation.
So myths and legends and...
Is this an actual science book?
This is from a science book. I promise you, I'll show you the whole book if you want.
Oh my God.
Grade 4.
Wow.
Grade 4 science.
But since when did they make? I've never seen anything with the maker. So what was it a particular ideology or faith?
In
Or
this,
was
in
it,
this
or was
thing?
this myth like?
It's just an activity. They have the lesson was about plants, and then this was a
Sort of like the story behind how
an
they
assessment.
became- okay.
It's just an assessment. There was questions after this.
Okay.
There was questions.
I wonder what the questions
They
were.
made it seem as though the maker was gone, like the
Before?
maker was gone. Yeah,
Yeah.
like he wasn't present. Like I wasn't present, wasn't aware, and then came down and found out this
Yeah.
happened, right? So the concept too that God kind of like left them, right?
It was
So-
the evolution. You can see it's like, he decided that this wasn't right, he made some sort of mistakes, and now he needs to correct it, and then
I
he
think
had to
it's
say
Also
stuff.
that he.
It's similar to the Christian concept. God created in 6-7 days and rested on the 7th day.
Then
Okay,
came-
you're on your own.
Things went wrong.
Yeah,
Yeah,
things
yeah.
that kind of thing.
God came back. Astaghfirullah. This is the problem. Now, how many of you who are in management would be trust your teachers with what's going on in the books? So it's you have to filter this down. You have to make sure each and every teacher, each and every parent understands these ideas, because maybe before today you might have seen a few things in there, but right now I think there's about 10 different points that have come up that people have identified. Okay.
Assalamu alaikum. I just wanted to. Why is it taking so long for Muslims to be aware of this manipulation? It's shocking, when you see the amount of what we've all gone through primary school, not going to kindergarten, primary, and our parents, everybody, the scholars.
It's years of secularization. This is why I brought in the little historical timeline, that even before the Islamic State was destroyed, and before secularization became embedded through political systems which were alien to Islam, even before that, the Muslims had declined in their thinking. There was no no research and development, and not enough of it. There were people in different pockets doing different things, but it was not a concerted effort. So it's hundreds of years of decline in intellectual thinking. Then after that, after our own decline, we got fed secularism. A, B, C, D. The books that are in the Muslim world, you're from the Muslim world, what are you taught in the books? These books are coming, from governments. And I just showed you about the UN Sustainable Development Goals. And I showed you that to show you what's going to be coming in the books now. Because all the countries have signed up for it. They have to produce the results, give the data. It said no strings attached, but I really highly doubt that. So now, I know in Pakistan, we had the SNC, with the Single National Curriculum, which was made based on these SDG goals. And these are funded by the World Bank. They give lots of money to researchers to sit and make textbooks. So now, Now, you see, why does it take long? Because we can't identify what's the root cause of the problem. Where is the problem? We try to put a plaster on it. We try to Islamize it, right? We try to say, okay, here's the poison. Okay, we need to get rid of that. Here's Islam. Just knowing Islam is going to get rid of that.
Not only textbooks, by the way.
Sorry?
I mean, not only textbooks. I mean, education for development, which is going to countries where they had natural disasters or they had wars. And so I was working with an NGO, Education for Development, and we are actually using the SDGs, and it's part of what we do. And even the grants that we give should be tied to the SDGs as well,
exactly.
From the different countries. And those are development, like developing education and redeveloping education. So it's even beyond just textbooks.
We're up against something really
Agendas.
big. That's what we have to realize. It's something really big because it's an ideology that dominates the world. It's an ideology that dominates international institutions and makes things happen in different countries. So now how are we going to counteract this? We're going to counteract it the same way when Islam first came, how Islam counteracted the Jahiliyyah, by making strong believers, by making people realize what is the truth. If you can make anyone switch on their brain, identify the truth, you've got the solution, because those people become dynamic personalities. Those people then contribute to the Muslim Ummah. They go out and they solve problems. They dedicate their life to solving the problems of the Muslims. So this is why every single one of us has a role to play. And that role is a 24/7 role. Because now we know how to put out the fire. We have to teach others how to do it as well. And we have to, like I said right at the beginning, a lot of effort has been made, but was it the right effort? Was it exactly hitting the nail on the head? Inshallah, we hope that this integration approach is the right way, and all of you are welcome to give us critique on it, advise, make it better. We would actually like you, if some of you, to do action research in your institutions on this so that you can see the application of it. Then you can, whatever hurdles you're coming across, you can feed them back to us and we can work it through, inshallah. So I'll just finish off, inshallah.
I just wanted to add that, like, in addition to science, though, we're seeing Islamophobic narratives in textbooks, even in the Middle East. Like, there was a textbook that I was just taking a look at recently to review, and I noticed that even though it was made for the Middle East and it looks very culturally appropriate, and then you'll read something like, when the countries gained independence from the Ottoman Empire.
Yeah.
Right, and I'm like, this is a huge catastrophe. It's not that they gained independence, but just those simple words made it sound as though something great. The other thing is, I was just recently speaking to like a relative of mine in one of the Muslim countries, and she was explaining that she's only like 5-6 years younger than me, but she was explaining that despite this country being very a well-known Muslim country, let's say, that's supposed to be strong in the Islamic area, that growing up, she grew up with the concept that Islam was just war and battles, and that the Prophet ﷺ was just an angry old man, a'udhu billah. And she was like, for the longest time, I wanted nothing to do with religion until she had traveled abroad, listened to like, you know, other lectures, things like that. She said it changed completely. And I was in shock because I'm going to share, it's Egypt. But I was just shocked, really? She went to public school? This is the concept she came up with?
For that, I know 2 ladies called Karen and Helen. I really do. Who work for UNESCO, and they're in Libya right now, doing teacher training. What kind of teacher training are they doing?
So
Right?
missionary.
So this is why.
I was just going to add to Zita, I was going to make the point earlier, is that I don't know whether some of you realised during COVID, Cambridge and Oxford were actually, you know, really allowing everybody to download these free science books, free social studies books. And I looked at some of the social studies books that were going to the Arab world, and, you know, they're written by Oxford and Cambridge. They've got particular ideology that is being fed through them. So sometimes we're very, you know, sort of oblivious and trusting that, you know, we're handing over to them the tarbiyah of our children, and we blindly follow. They're teaching us social studies, you know, how to develop the social systems and the communities in our countries.
Not only that, like even like in psychology-wise, like there is actually now a movement for Islamic psychology, which is when you listen to the lectures, you see that you deal with a human being in a different concept than secular psychology, because you put Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you put patient, you put sabr, it's way different, and the sunnah. So it's actually everything in our life as Muslim is secularized now. I don't see maybe just going to the masjid and praying and going to Hajj. Even to Hajj now it's become a trade show, right? So it's subhanallah.
So, I mean, just looking at what Dr. Jadi showed, right? You know, he showed that slide where there was a research done on Muslim countries and their association with science, and they didn't find any problems, having science in Islam, right? The scary part is the science now of this ideology is being taught in those countries, and that's where we say, yeah, it's science, it's okay, we're okay with science. But these hidden messages in the back are not being exposed. So that's why when I first, my intent of coming here is like, how can we take this at a global level? Because this is a need right now, and it's a desperate need. And I think that's where I encourage everyone in this room, not just to think about your own school, but how can we take this concept and have it at a global level? And I think that is really the big picture that I think we should all keep in mind. And obviously it'll take us time to get there, but I think that is really the aim I look at, is a global level of how we're going to combat this and have, because this is serious stuff. I mean, look at the numbers right now coming out of Muslim countries where the next generation don't want to do anything with Islam. And go to Saudi Arabia, you don't have to go far. The so-called place where,
Yes, sure.
I don't have to even talk more about that. You can go and do your own research on what the new Saudi youth has. So this is really, really, I think it's very important. We actually have to look at that global concept and how we can make an impact on a global level.
Yeah, Jazakallah khair.
But that's across the board, isn't it? So that wherever you go in the Muslim world,
إذا دخلوا جحر ضب لدخلتموه.
that if you want good education, send them to British schools or American schools. Or if you go to the UAE, you want to go to these English schools that are modeled on.
That's where the elite come from. But even the other schools, even the government schools, have the same textbooks.
They have the same textbooks.
Even when they come to modernize the curriculum in our Arabic countries or Muslim countries, they bring in people from outside to do that.
Yeah. But it's typically the elite that so in terms of the global element, how do you do the 80-20 rule? How do you fix 20% of the population in order to drive 80% of the value?
I think that's what you focus on in the beginning, because those are the ones who are the leaders. Those are the people making the changes. And that's why when I said the whole model of non-profit, I was going with that model, because those are the people are affording it. Those are the people we want. We need to teach those people this. And that's where they push, because they are the ones in many of these countries, right, that 20% of the population that you're mentioning have the money, have the resource, have the background, and if you can change and influence them, that would trickle down to the other 80%.
Yeah, no,
Inshallah,
we're on the same page.
We can explore these ideas.
We're on the same page.
Inshallah, we can explore them further. Let me just finish off my slides, inshallah. But this particular research that I found by Naomi Oreskes, I can't remember her name. Yeah, Oreskes. She's a professor of history at Harvard. And she's written a book called Why Trust Science. And there's loads of books like this now, by the way. I think we should start finding out what's going on. And I just took a summary of it. ChatGPT helped me. I started with ChatGPT, I'm ending with it. So in this article, she wrote, in this book, the summary of the book is science always right? Are scientific truths permanent? Because science has hijacked truth, right? And secular ideology has enabled it to do that. So there's actually a connect between science and secularism. Science is no longer what it should be. Dr. Yunus was talking about what science is about observing, finding out, studying, understanding, but it's no longer that. It's now telling you that it's always right, and it's telling you that what I say is truth and anything else is falsehood. But she has explored this, and she's come up with some important things. She said that examples from the history of science, such as the Earth's position in the universe, and the nature of time and space illustrate that scientific understanding can change over time. I know in my news feed every morning something or other comes up about, something new that has been discovered, like Andromeda Galaxy. Apparently there's something coming out of it that they don't know if it's part of the galaxy or if it's something else. They'd never seen it before, but now they found it, and now they want to find out what it is. So the scientific truths change. Andromeda Galaxy, how big actually is it? What actually is it? And this thing they found now has thrown a spanner in the works. So we see this happens all the time. There's no universally agreed upon definition of the scientific method. I looked at quite a few articles last night. It was very interesting that what is the scientific method? It's not agreed upon. And even if people follow a particular definition, they don't apply it. They don't apply it. The way in which they collect data is flawed. The way in which they interpret data is flawed. If you've done research, you know how easy it is to try and just select the things that you want to select. We all know how to do that. Yeah, even for my presentation, I know how to pick the points out of the textbook that are really going to shock you. Yeah. So this is something that, again, it's not discussed, because for a long time science has been at the forefront saying that, listen to me and I am the only truth available. Scientific methods have varied across disciplines and throughout history, leading to ongoing debates among scientists. We don't hear of this, but scientists do debate these things. The complexity of the world is glossed over by science. I love this point that she made. That this is what we are saying, that the complexity of a cell or a plant, a leaf, anything, is glossed over by science by just giving you boring laws. You need a nuanced view of science that embraces its uncertainties while recognizing its importance in advancing human understanding. We need science. Science helps us, but it should not be poisoning our minds. Science is the dynamic process of learning and discovery rather than a fixed and infallible entity. Science might be wrong, but if it's wrong, then we just find another way of doing what we want to do, and we find another medicine, or we find another technique. If we find something better, we can adopt it. Science is a valuable tool for advancing knowledge and addressing real-world problems. So this is really how we should teach science to children. We should make children view science in this way. We should have these questions and these answers available for them, that make them realize that, okay, we don't want them to be robots that we're just feeding and inputting. We want them to be thinkers. We want them to question and understand and conclude for themselves, inshallah. And just to summarize, before I summarize, so Dr. Yunus talked about knowledge, power, will, and purpose. So really, this is what's missing from science. The fact that there is a knowledgeable creator who has the power and the will to create all of this with a specific purpose. No science lesson can be taught without these concepts. And just to conclude, what we've learned today, inshallah, is to identify some secular terms, look for hidden ideological implications, ask questions about the origins of processes, and ask questions about the knowledge, will, and power of the phenomena. Sorry about the spelling mistake. Okay, I'm done. Jazakallah khair. If there's any questions, we've got about 5-10 minutes.
Okay, any question?
Sorry. Question is not there. I just want to clear my thought. After listening all this or listening to the discussions that you people have made, that was wonderful. I just want to clear one thing. What I am getting, this war is not against about particular religion. This war is against God, Allah. If our children are reading these books, so these books are being read by their own children as well. So if I am feeling somewhere, it's basically mind washing. They want to finish the concept of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Or look, there is the concept of God in every single religion. It's not only in Islam. So why do we think it's only against Islam?
No, you're right. The secular ideology, the historical roots of it, and quite a few people here have mentioned it as well. It happened when the church and the state separated, and it separated because the church, along with the monarchy, was oppressing the people, and the people had had enough, and they decided that they were, science was not being given its due place. Thinkers were not allowed to propagate what they wanted. There was no freedom of speech for them. So they separated from the church. Okay, they said that the church can have no say in politics. can have no say in society and life. And slowly, slowly, that increased into all spheres of life. So now we see, secularization has invaded everything. Whereas 100 years before, you can see that most people still believed in a God. 100 years back, most people still believed in a God. But now, as time goes by, less and less people believe in God. So it's the onslaught of the secular ideology against the creator of the universe. Why? Because they don't want anyone to turn to him. Okay, and I don't know if any of you saw that there are 2 billion Muslims in the world now. Mm-hmm. Out of 8 billion population of the world, 2 billion are Muslims. This was about 2-3 months back. So the fact that Islam is rising shows that people are becoming Muslims, shows that no matter what they do, at the end of it, the deen of Allah cannot be removed. The idea of Allah cannot be removed. It's just we have to understand that the 6 billion people who are not Muslims, okay, who do not believe in a creator, or those who are atheists, we need to provide them with that alternative thinking. And we can also see the moral degradation of Western society and how it's impacting us as well. So it's an agenda against the creator of the universe by people who don't believe in it. And it started in the Age of Enlightenment, so-called Age of Enlightenment, and it's been 500 years since then.
And subhanAllah, we have to protect our kids from that, because as many as we are getting, subhanAllah, a huge population of Muslims, so those are Muslims coming into Islam. The problem is we have to preserve those who are already in Islam. Our kids, those are the ones that are being that they're being played with. They're being brainwashed, and so a lot of us are looking at, oh wow, mashallah, Islam is growing, but yet at the other end, we're losing a lot of our Muslim children because of that secular worldview of education.
And I think the answer is yes, please.
And I want to answer your question. It's not only Muslims who are suffering. Yeah. It's not only Islam. I think all religions that
this is a point.
So that's like every religion is suffering, but I am sure they are trying the same way as we are doing now. So it's not like we're protecting our Islam, our religion. I'm sure other religions they are doing and trying their best to protect. But that's why when we have the LGBTQ plus in Canada, you see the Christians, they rise up with us, and they were against us in other ways. But when we have the same cause and the same purpose, we united together against the LGBT.
But what's pertinent from an Islamic perspective is that all of the other religions
have left it.
Right? Christianity is no longer a coherent religion. Mm-hmm. It's ceded its moral authority to the fads of the time. Islam is the only one
that's why it's
not in it, and that's why they're going after Islam. Every other religion has capitulated. Nobody believes in Christianity no more. Nobody wants to follow Hinduism. Right? Islam is the only last religion.
That people are holding into it.
Islam is the only intact religion.
Yeah.
And Islam is the only universal religion. And so the question isn't whether Islam will survive. That's not the question, though. The question is whether we're part of that process in order to keep it alive. God will always keep it alive.
Yes.
This is His faith, right? So He will use other people, or He might just bless this group in order to do that. Inshallah.
I also want to add, like, if you look at, if you do some reading on Dajjal, right? And this is something the Prophet always mentioned. I mean, it was a very serious matter then, and it's still a very serious matter now. Dajjal is the anti of everything Isa alayhi salam is. So Isa alayhi salam takes us towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Dajjal takes us away from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So these ideologies are based on that. That's why they're against all religion. For them, like he mentioned, all the other religions have already given up. This is the last thing that's standing, and that's why they're coming so heavy-handed. So it's a global effort. This whole effort is, I encourage everyone to go look at the whole Dajjalic thing and the hadith of Dajjal, and it makes sense. It's pretty much clear, like black and white, why this is happening.
And even all the other religions, anyone who's still left in them is against Islam. You'll find that they're all fighting Islam.
Indeed.
because we're holding on. That's why. I feel we're targeted because we are really holding on. We're like the last religion basically that's really holding on to our principles from the start. We haven't let go of any of the principles. We're not changing religion because time is changing, because the world is being modernized. We are keeping it. And this is why it's a problem to them. They don't want that.
I think the biggest problem is the Quran. Is the problem is not changed, and it can be changed. So that's why difficulty is for them. Like, that's the difficult that the Quran has not changed. They can change it.
I think in this question I feel there are two things. One is like there are common elements in terms of really that we can unite against the enemy, and I think that in our 5D model we really want to have two versions, one for Muslims, one for non-Muslims. So for non-Muslims, we don't want to include any ayah and hadith, anything. So we're going to use God only, and we think that could be perfectly fine. Now some people are concerned that we're going to make Christian to be more Christian. Let it be, no problem. If the Christian going to go and use it, so we think it's actually better than to be atheist for that. So, and because our argument is the oneness of God, the Creator, we make argument for Creator. So, and I think that it seems like from Christian and other religion, they mostly lost the ground, and they don't really have an argument against this secularism. So Islam does provide it. I think we could, in a way that provide this, means to them as well that they can have themselves. So therefore, what I saw as well this time in U.S., the coming together for, let's say, what I call cultural war should be done at the faith level first and foremost. The other things, I think the essential, we need to look at it, the whole question here, that basically materialism is saying that don't look for any source other than the universe. That's only materialism. Now, in a way that you enter this building, you like it, you enjoy, you find everything's just really good, what you need, but you wonder, how this comes into existence. They tell you, don't look for anything other than the piece of these buildings. You look at the window, you look at the carpet, you look at different items. Try to say is the source. So essentially, all religion are looking something beyond the universe as the source of universe. In other words, you're looking some things beyond the building and say there must be something different that building to be the source for the building. Now, who is this? What is that? That's secondary question, another question. The essential question now that materialism say there is no such source, that everything is just what you see and what you experience in the physical world. So deny any other dimension. And in a way that does not even allow us to have a debate there might be another dimension. And while God is all about having another dimension, God is not something in the universe, is beyond the universe. So therefore I think this is part like, okay, what is the nature of God, an attribute of that's something else. But does God exist? For this question, I feel like the people of all faith can somehow, help each other.
If I could just say, this might not be important at all, but the activity threw me off a little bit. The reading we did, because to me it's not secular ideology at all. In fact, when I read the first sentence, I was quite pleased with it. There's a maker that's synonymous with creator, and it says these birds were created. But obviously, until when I got to the end, I hated it. So my reflection is this: is that if this is a science textbook that is showing a very fictitious story to negate faith in God, I think it's served its purpose in doing so. So we have to be mindful of that also being a tool in taking God out of the equation. If it was a sincere attempt in putting God into the equation, my reflection is such that we can't just do it haphazardly. Like, imagine in our Islamic schools, we wonder, well, why are our children not engaged with Islamic studies or not becoming very faithful pupils, et cetera, et cetera. If we're trying to do it in a very cheesy manner, that doesn't relate, because I would, in all honesty, rather read something secular than what I read there. So that's my reflection. I'm not sure if, I don't know if that was important, but I don't know if that was supposed to be secular. I just didn't see any secular ideology in that.
It's not a book written by Muslims. It's from South African government, actually. It's one of their books.
Okay.
So I think it's what the second thing you said, that discrediting the creator. That was the objective. That to discredit any belief in a creator, to show that's ludicrous, and it's the creator. If he's there, he might have flaws. He might make mistakes. He might be cruel. He might be evil, etc.
Right. Okay. Good. Because again, that highlights the other tool that they have.
This is why I chose it, because it's hidden. It's that you wouldn't expect this.
Right.
In a science book, you wouldn't expect that.
Right.
But you would expect these kind of things in English textbooks. And there's lots of comprehensions that we do for, primary education, in which there's a creature who's not happy with itself, and then it wonders why it's like this, and then there's a whole story given about why it's white or black or a swan or a duck or whatever. Right. And again, it's attributing, it's taking away that there's a all-wise creator who is all-powerful, and saying that, well, this was a need for this particular animal, or this was the reason for why it's doing this, or why it has this particular feature. And again, that's ration and that secular thought, that you can choose what you want to be.
Right.
I think also the wording was intentional, that you say visited. The whole thing about somebody who visits is an occasional thing. They're not ever present. And so that for me sort of clenched it. I just thought that they're really trying to make sure that it's just this occasional thing, and that the creator isn't somebody who's omnipotent, as we know.
Yeah, I think we could be here all night discussing that paragraph.
Absolutely.
So, any other question?
Yeah, just sharing our experience in Indonesia. So we come to decision that we have made our own book for this, because for primary level it is very dangerous. The concept, like for example, we are approached by Pearson. Even the CEO of Pearson come to our organization just to accommodate what we need, but we bargain that the writers should be from us, from the teachers, because they know what they need, but it is not agreed. And then we also cooperate with Pakistan, AFAC, try to about the books, but the concept of the culture also something that we have to think about it. Not only about the content, but also the culture itself in each our country. Talking about textbook is about also big business. Because imagine for our organization is 400,000 students. So it's a very big business for us to make, and then finally we made our own books for primary level.
But actually books are prepared on the mindset. So first and foremost, mindset should be grounded, because as Uzma is showing us from all these examples we show, there's actually one simple mindset which is embodied in all these textbooks and in the documentaries, in the TV shows, in everywhere. But because I think why we are suffering is that lack of structural mindset as a believer has to have, I think. So inshallah, that's why we are trying to have this. And just before ending, I would like to just very briefly add, I think one of the biggest important problems that we have is not only denying God totally, because we are in the postmodern era, not in the modern era, denying God totally, but in the postmodern era we are coming with and seeing some other concepts of God, like energy, like some natural, I don't know even their names, but there are so many names out there. I think the most important thing should be done a real and better differentiation between concept of God in Islam and the concept of God in all the other religions or kind of isms or kind of ideologies, whatever there are. Because concept of God in Islam is totally different, because actually Professor Yunus has also pointed out they are accepting God in a way, but they're naming him in another way. Like they're just telling it's just an energy and giving all the names and attributions of Allah to that something specific as they think as God. But this is not true concept of God in Islam. So we have to call the people to Allah, not a general idea about creator, maker, mover, whatever the name it is, right? I think this is the maybe second step after making them and ourselves convinced there is a creator, and that creator is Allah.
Yeah, but that's part, because we had a lot of discussion on that as well. The key part, the way in our model, the way we do that, we don't really give them the answer. We want them to find the answer. They're finding the answer in a way that in the fourth dimension they will do that. That's one thing in the team we always debate that, because once in the first three dimensions they negate that anything else could be God, nature, chance, and cause. And then we see most of the time the team members, they will start the fourth dimension talking about God. We say, no, don't talk about God. Let them to discover God. How? You have to make case that is God. But how you make the case, how you name it, again, we really don't think it make big difference. For Muslim, obviously, you should say Allah. But actually, when Islam came, people of Mecca, they were calling Allah, Islam did not change the name. It was the thing they were referring, they're using that. But Islam changed the meaning of the concept and says Allah is the one that basically with certain attribute, like infinite power. Infinite power by logic can only be one. So in a way that basically we conclude, we say, but the attribute, you come up with certain attribute, you say, look, I try to find the source of this phone. So I look at study the phone, and I conclude that the source of the phone can only be the one with infinite power and knowledge. So when I say that, when I reach this conclusion, by logic, the infinite power can only be one, cannot be two. And that's what I call, as a Muslim, we call it Allah. That's all. So in a way that Allah is basically how we name the source of the creation. The source of creation, the way we look at the creation, is absolute. We call mutlaq. Alim al-mutlaq, qadir al-mutlaq. Mutlaq means infinite. And infinite by logic can only be one. And therefore, if we can establish the case that the source is mutlaq, absolute, that basically that can only be one. If we can make case to say the phone can only be made by the one who has infinite power, that's by logic, that's only one. So I think that's essential part, rather than to say, we're Muslim and we believe it's one God. Look, don't be like Christian, they believe three. Now we make case why it is one God. Because this requires infinite power. And by logic, infinite power can only be one.
Yeah, that's why it is the first step, actually. But I think the second step, after accepting there is a one creator and maker,
yes,
right? All these, the people of spiritual, movements in this I would call it like neo-religious age, whatever it is, but they're accepting the idea of God.
Sorry. So they're accepting the idea of God and maker, because I also talk to so many people, having this ideology. They are saying, don't worry, I'm accepting God. I'm a believer. But it's like a total on the other page.
But that's why you have to, after that, you have to connect to the divine revelation, to the Quran.
Yes, that's why we need the revelation.
So you relate to the Quran and you match them. You say, look, as I conclude from the universe, I also conclude from the Quran, which match each other. And then you say, this God is what's the God of Quran. Yeah. And in the Quran, he is the one speaking. Yeah. And therefore, now you go from the Quran to the moral dimension.
Yeah, that's why I said this is the second step.
You have to go there.